Queen Zarathel stood on the bridge of her massive warship and looked out at the stars that belonged to her empire. She was 7 feet tall, with natural armor covering her dark purple skin and muscles that could crush steel with ease. For 300 years her people, the Valorians, had conquered system after system, and no one had ever stopped them. Today she would meet representatives from a small planet called Earth that wanted to make peace. The human delegation arrived in a tiny ship that looked like a toy compared to her battle cruiser. Zarathel watched through her viewing screen as the humans walked through her ship corridors. They were so small and soft-looking. Their leader was a man named Jake Morrison, who barely reached her shoulder in height. His skin was pale and looked fragile, like it would tear if she touched it too hard. He had brown hair and kind eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. The peace talks began in her great hall, where dozens of alien species had come to watch. Jake spoke first, and his voice was calm and steady. He talked about friendship between their worlds and how humans wanted to learn from the mighty Valorian Empire. Zarathel found his words amusing. This tiny creature thought his people could offer something to her vast empire. Then Jake did something that surprised her. He began speaking in perfect Valorian language, without any translator device. His pronunciation was flawless, and he used formal court language that even some of her own nobles struggled with. He knew ancient Valorian customs and bowed in exactly the right way for addressing a queen. When he presented gifts from Earth, they were chosen perfectly to honor Valorian traditions. The human gift included rare metals that her empire needed, and art pieces that showed deep understanding of Valorian culture. Jake explained each gift with knowledge that impressed even her oldest advisors. He knew the history of her royal family going back centuries, and spoke of past Valorian victories with respect and accurate details. As the talks continued, Jake showed he understood galactic politics better than most diplomats she had met. He discussed trade routes between star systems and knew which alien species were allies or enemies of her empire. When her military advisors asked him questions about human defenses, he answered with careful words that revealed nothing important, but satisfied their curiosity. The marriage proposal came as the final part of the peace agreement. Jake would become her husband, and Earth would become a protected world under Valorian rule. Zarathel agreed because it amused her to have this small human as a trophy husband. She could show him off to other alien rulers and demonstrate how completely humans had surrendered to her power. The wedding ceremony took place 3 days later in the same great hall. Jake wore traditional Valorian marriage robes that had been adjusted to fit his smaller frame. He performed each ritual correctly and spoke the ancient vows in her language without a single mistake. Representatives from 20 different species watched as the human married their queen. During the celebration feast, Jake impressed everyone with his knowledge of different alien foods and customs. He could speak bits of languages from across the galaxy and showed respect for each species present. Several alien ambassadors told Zarathel how lucky she was to have such a well-educated husband. Their first weeks together passed pleasantly. Enough. Jake had quarters next to hers on the royal ship, and they shared meals together daily. He was an excellent conversationalist who could discuss military strategy, art, science, and philosophy with equal skill. He made her laugh with stories about human culture and never seemed intimidated by her size or power. But Zarathel began to notice strange things about her new husband. Jake never seemed to get tired, even after long days of meetings and ceremonies. While other species needed 8 to 10 hours of sleep, Jake appeared fresh and alert after only 4 hours of rest. He could see perfectly in the dim lighting that her people preferred, even though humans were supposed to need bright light. Jake also moved through her ship with unusual confidence for someone who had just arrived. He never got lost in the maze of corridors and seemed to know where everything was located. Her guards reported that he could walk silently through metal hallways without making any sound. When she asked him about this, he just smiled and said, "Humans were naturally quiet walkers." The most puzzling thing was how Jake seemed to predict what her military advisors would say before they spoke. During strategy meetings, he would nod agreement moments before her generals made their points. Sometimes he would start to speak, then stop and let others voice the same ideas he seemed ready to express. When questioned, he claimed it was just good listening skills. One evening, Zarathel was reviewing reports from border systems when Jake joined her in her study. He glanced at the documents on her desk and casually mentioned that the defensive positions in the Kepler sector looked vulnerable to flanking attacks. The information he was looking at contained no tactical details, yet he had immediately identified the same weakness her best. Military minds had spent days analyzing. Jake seemed to realize he had said too much and quickly changed the subject to asking about her family history. But Zarathel filed away this incident, along with all the other small mysteries about her husband. She was beginning to suspect that this marriage alliance might not be the simple victory she had assumed. Her royal guards reported that Jake had requested access to the ship communication systems to send messages to Earth. They said he claimed humans like to stay in touch with family members, but his messages were sent using encryption methods that seemed unusually sophisticated for a primitive species. When she asked him about this, Jake explained that humans were naturally protective of their privacy. Despite her growing curiosity about Jake's true nature, Zarathil found herself genuinely enjoying his company. He treated her with respect, but not fear, and seemed to appreciate her intelligence rather than just her power. For the first time in her long life, she had a companion who could match her intellect and engage her in meaningful conversation. Whatever secrets Jake might be hiding, she decided she was content to discover them slowly. The emergency klaxons woke Zarathil from deep sleep, and she knew immediately that something terrible had happened. Her military aide burst into her chambers with news that 3 border systems had been attacked simultaneously by the Drakai Consortium. The insectoid warriors had struck without warning, and her forces were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Jake peered at her side within moments of the alarm sounding. He was fully dressed and alert as if he had been awake for hours. Zarathal noticed he moved with purpose through her ship corridors, heading directly to the command center without being told where the emergency meeting would take place. When she asked how he knew where to go, Jake said he had heard her guards talking about the situation. In the command center, her generals were studying holographic displays showing the 3 attacked systems. The Drakai had used coordinated strikes to hit all major defensive installations at the same time. Their insect-like ships swarmed like angry hornets around Valorian positions, and their superior numbers were winning every engagement. General Korax, her most experienced military commander, was explaining their defensive options when Jake quietly spoke up from behind them. He suggested repositioning the Third Fleet to create a pincer movement that would trap the Drakai forces between 2 defensive lines. The strategy he described was complex and showed deep understanding of both Valorian fleet capabilities and Drakai attack patterns. Zarathil stared at her husband in surprise. The tactical formation he had outlined was something her military academy taught only to advanced students, and Jake had explained it with the confidence of someone who had used such strategies in actual combat. When she asked where he had learned about military tactics, Jake smiled and said humans were naturally good at pattern recognition. General Korax looked skeptical, but agreed to try Jake's plan since their current approach was failing badly. Within hours, reports came back that the pincer movement was working exactly as Jake had predicted. The Drakai forces found themselves caught between 2 Valorian fleets and began taking heavy losses for the first time since the attacks began. But Jake's suggestions went beyond simple tactics. He recommended specific weapon modifications that would be more effective against Drakhi armor and suggested communication frequencies that would be harder for the insectoids to intercept. When asked how he knew such technical details, Jake claimed he had read about similar species in human scientific journals. The War Council meetings became daily events as the conflict expanded. Each day Jake offered insights that proved remarkably accurate. He could predict where the Drakhi would attack next and suggest defenses that perfectly countered their strategies. His knowledge of enemy capabilities seemed impossibly detailed. For someone who had never fought them before, Zarathil began watching Jake more carefully during these meetings. She noticed he never took notes, yet remembered every detail discussed. His suggestions often came moments before her own advisors reached the same conclusions through lengthy analysis. Sometimes he would start to speak, then catch himself, and let others voice ideas that he seemed ready to express. The situation grew worse when Drakhi forces broke through Valorian defenses using new tactics that seemed designed specifically to counter traditional Valorian warfare. Their attacks targeted weak points that should have been classified secrets, and they used weapons that exploited gaps in Valorian armor that few species knew existed. Jake requested permission to help with intelligence gathering, claiming that humans had natural diplomatic skills that might be useful for understanding enemy communications. Zarathel agreed, since irregular intelligence officers were having no success intercepting Drakhi battle plans. What happened next amazed everyone in the command center. Jake sat at a communication console and within minutes was providing real-time translations of Drakhi military communications. He could decode their battle language and relay enemy troop movements as they happened. The information he provided allowed Valorian forces to anticipate attacks and respond with perfect timing. General Korax asked Jake how he had learned to understand Drakhi language so quickly. Jake explained that human brains were good at recognizing patterns in sounds and that he was just making educated guesses about what the communications meant. But his guesses were accurate enough to save entire fleets from ambush attacks. Late one night, Zarathil was reviewing battle reports when she decided to check the security recordings from that day meetings. What she saw on the screens made her question everything she thought she knew about her husband. The recordings showed Jake moving through ship corridors between meetings with speed and grace that looked almost inhuman. In one recording, Jake walked from the command center to his quarters in half the time it should have taken. His movements were fluid and precise, like a trained warrior rather than a diplomat. When he thought no one was watching, his careful human walk changed into something that reminded her of how her own elite guards moved. Another recording showed Jake in the ship communication center working alone at night. His fingers moved across control panels with the speed and certainty of someone who had used Valorian technology for years. He accessed systems that required high-level security, clearance, and navigated through complex menus without any hesitation or mistakes. The next morning, Zarathel confronted Jake about what she had seen. She asked him directly if he was really just a simple human diplomat as he claimed to be. Jake looked uncomfortable for the first time since she had met him and admitted that he had not been completely honest about human capabilities. He explained that Earth had more advanced technology than they had initially revealed, and that some humans received special training for diplomatic missions. Jake claimed he was still just a regular person who had been given extra education to prepare for meeting with alien species. He insisted he had no military background and was only trying to help end the war quickly, but Zarathil was no longer convinced by his explanations. She had seen too many things that did not match his story of being an ordinary human. His knowledge of military strategy, his ability to decode alien languages instantly, and his physical capabilities all suggested he was far more than he appeared to be. Despite her growing suspicions, Zarathel found that she trusted Jake completely. His advice had saved thousands of Valorian lives, and his presence brought her comfort during the stressful days of war. Whatever secrets he was hiding, she believed he was using his abilities to protect her people rather than harm them. The war continued to rage across multiple star systems, but with Jake's help, the Valorians were no longer losing ground. His strategic insights and intelligence gathering had turned the tide of several major battles. However, Zarathil knew that bigger questions remained unanswered about who Jake really was and what his true mission might be. The war took a devastating turn when the Drakhi unveiled their new weapon during a massive assault on the Valorian home system. The energy beams cut through Valorian armor like it was made of paper, and entire battle fleets were destroyed within minutes. Zarathil watched in horror as centuries of military superiority crumbled before her eyes. Her generals reported casualty numbers that made her sick to hear. Millions of Valorian warriors were dead or dying, and their most advanced warships were floating wrecks in space. The Drakhi had somehow developed technology that made traditional Valorian defenses completely useless. Her empire faced total destruction within days if something did not change immediately. Jake found Zarathil in her private chambers staring out at the stars where the battle raged. She was considering surrender to save what remained of her people when he quietly sat beside her. He had never seen her look so defeated, and it pained him to watch the strongest person he knew struggling with impossible choices. He told her he wanted to contact Earth for humanitarian aid. Jake explained that humans had medical supplies and refugee ships that could help evacuate Valorian civilians from the war zones. Zarathil almost laughed at the suggestion, since human technology seemed primitive compared to what was needed to stop the Drakhi weapons. But she had no other options left and agreed to let Jake send his message to Earth. She expected a polite refusal or perhaps an offer to accept a few thousand refugees on human worlds. What she did not expect was the response that came back within 2 hours, promising immediate military assistance. Jake seemed unsurprised by the quick reply and began making preparations for the arrival of human forces. He requested access to Valorian military databases and star charts, claiming the humans would need tactical information to coordinate their aid efforts. Zarathil granted his requests since she saw no harm in sharing data with allies who were trying to help. The human ship arrived exactly when Jake said it would, appearing near the edge of the Valorian home system. Zarathil expected to see a small medical vessel or perhaps a transport ship loaded with supplies. Instead, her sensors detected something that made no sense at all. The human ship was sleek and elegant, with curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal. It was smaller than her battle cruisers, but moved with impossible grace through space. Most puzzling of all, it barely registered on Valorian detection systems, as if it was somehow hiding its true size and power. Captain Lisa Grant contacted them from the human vessel, and her voice was calm and professional. She spoke perfect Valorian and addressed Zarathil with proper royal protocols. Lisa offered her services to help end the conflict and asked for permission to engage the Drakhi forces that were attacking the outer planets. Zarathil almost refused, since one small ship could not possibly make a difference against the massive Drakhi fleets. But Jake quietly urged her to give Lisa a chance, and something in his eyes made her agree. She granted permission for the human ship to join the battle while expecting to watch it be destroyed within minutes. What happened next shattered everything Zarathil thought she knew about the universe. The human ship moved toward the largest Drakhi battle group with impossible speed, leaving trails of light behind it. When the insectoid warriors opened fire with their new weapons, the beams simply bounced off invisible shields that surrounded the human vessel. Then the human ship began firing back, and Zarathil gasped at what she saw. Beams of pure energy reached across vast distances of space to strike Drakhi ships with perfect accuracy. Each shot completely destroyed its target, leaving nothing but glowing particles scattered in space. Within minutes, an entire Drakhi fleet ceased to exist. The remaining insectoid forces tried to retreat, but found themselves unable to escape. The human ships somehow prevented their faster-than-light drives from working, trapping them in normal space where they could be hunted down. Lisa methodically eliminated every Drakhi vessel without taking any damage to her own ship dot. In less than 1 hour, Captain Grant had single-handedly destroyed 3 full Drakhi battle fleets that had been terrorizing Valorian forces for weeks. The weapon technology she used was beyond anything Zarathil had ever seen and made even the most advanced Valorian systems look like ancient relics. Jake appeared beside Zarathil on the bridge as she watched the impossible battle unfold. She turned to him with questions and accusations, ready to pour out, but stopped when she saw his expression. He looked sad and tired, as if he had been carrying a heavy burden for a long time. He began explaining that humans had been watching galactic politics for many centuries, while developing technology far beyond what other species had achieved. Earth was not a primitive backwater world, seeking protection, but a hidden superpower that had been carefully managing galactic affairs from the shadows. The marriage between them had not been Earth begging for mercy, but rather humanity offering the Valorian Empire a chance to become partners instead of another species that needed to be managed from a distance. Jake revealed that he was not a simple diplomat, but one of Earth's most skilled operatives, trained from childhood for deep cover missions. Captain Grant docked with their ship and came aboard to meet with Zarathil personally. Lisa was a small woman, with short blonde hair and confident blue eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She moved with the same fluid grace that Zarathil had noticed in Jake, and spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to command. Lisa explained that humans had been protecting dozens of species from extinction and preventing galactic wars for over 1,000 years. Every major conflict had been influenced by human intervention, and technologies that other species developed often had subtle human guidance behind them. The galaxy was far more managed than anyone realized. She showed Zarathil recordings of human installations hidden throughout space, including massive fleets of warships that could appear anywhere within days. The technology demonstrations that followed proved that humans could control faster-than-light travel, manipulate energy on stellar scales, and coordinate activities across thousands of light years instantly. Jake took Zarathil aside and admitted that every victory her empire had achieved and every successful campaign had received human support behind the scenes. The Valorian Empire existed because humans had allowed it to exist and had secretly guided its expansion to prevent it from becoming a threat to galactic stability. The revelation left Zarathil struggling to understand her place in a universe where everything she thought she knew was wrong. Her mighty empire was really just one piece in a vast game being played by a species she had considered weak and primitive. The man she had married, thinking he was a trophy husband, was actually one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. But as she looked at Jake, she realized that despite the deception, she still cared for him deeply. He had used his abilities to protect her people, and his presence had brought her happiness during their time together. The question now was whether she could accept being part of humanity's larger plan, or if she would fight against the truth that had been revealed. Jake took Zarathil to what she had always believed was empty space near Earth's solar system, but as their ship approached, he activated controls that she had never seen before. Suddenly, the darkness around them, filled with lights as massive structures, became visible where nothing had existed moments earlier. Zarathil stared in shock at installations that dwarfed even her largest space stations. Hundreds of human warships materialized as their hiding systems. shut down, and each vessel was larger and more advanced than anything in the Valorian fleet. The ships moved in perfect formation around defensive platforms that bristled with weapons Zarathel could not even identify. She was looking at a military force that could conquer the entire galaxy if it chose to do so. Admiral Sam Rodriguez welcomed them aboard the command station, and Zarathel found herself face to face with the most powerful human she had ever met. Sam was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to calculate everything around her. She moved with quiet confidence and spoke with the authority of someone who controlled forces beyond imagination. The briefing room where Sam explained human operations was larger than most Valorian ship bridges and filled with displays showing every star system in the galaxy. Zarathel watched as information flowed across screens, revealing the true scope of human activities. There were monitoring stations in every major system and human agents embedded in governments across hundreds of worlds. Sam began by showing her recordings that went back over 1,000 years, documenting how humans had first discovered other species and made the decision to remain hidden while guiding galactic development. She explained that early human explorers had found a galaxy filled with species that were either too aggressive or too primitive to create lasting peace on their own. Rather than reveal themselves and risk starting massive wars, humans had chosen to work from the shadows. They prevented extinction events, stopped conflicts before they grew too large, and eliminated threats like the Drak-Hai when negotiation was impossible. Every species in the galaxy, including the Valorians, had benefited from human protection without ever knowing it. The displays showed battles that Zarathil remembered from her youth, where Valorian forces had achieved impossible victories against superior enemies. Sam revealed that human ships had been present at every engagement, providing invisible support and ensuring that Valorian casualties remained minimal. Her people had never fought alone, even when they thought they were abandoned. Jake stood beside her as Sam explained his true role in human operations. He was not just a diplomat, but one of their most elite deep-cover agents trained from childhood to blend in with alien species. His mission had been to evaluate whether the Valorians could become true allies or needed to be contained like other aggressive civilizations. The training Jake had received was beyond anything Zarathil could imagine. He had been genetically enhanced to be stronger and faster than normal humans, while retaining the ability to appear completely ordinary. His brain had been augmented with implants that let him access human databases instantly and communicate with other agents across vast distances. Sam showed her recordings of Jake previous missions where he had spent decades living among different alien species. He had prevented 3 major wars and helped establish peaceful governments on 7 different worlds. His ability to understand and adapt to alien cultures was legendary among human operatives, and his success rate was perfect. But the most shocking revelation was that there were hundreds of other human agents like Jake embedded throughout galactic civilization. Every major government had human advisors. Every important trade route was monitored by human observers, and every technological development was guided by human influence. The galaxy was essentially a human protectorate disguised as independent civilizations. Zarathel struggled to process the implications of what she was learning. Her entire life had been shaped by human interference, and every decision she thought she had made independently had been influenced by forces she never suspected existed. The proud Valorian Empire was really just another managed species in humanity's vast network of control. Admiral Rodriguez seemed to understand her distress and explained that humans did not see themselves as rulers, but as gardeners tending a vast garden. They wanted other species to grow and flourish, but prevented them from destroying themselves or others. The goal was not domination, but stability and protection for all forms of intelligent life. The tour of human facilities continued. with visits to research centers where scientists worked on technologies that seemed like magic to Zarathil. She saw devices that could manipulate time and space, weapons that could destroy stars, and communication systems that operated faster than the speed of thought. Human science had advanced so far beyond other species that comparison was meaningless. In the medical centers she met human doctors who were working to cure diseases that affected dozens of different alien species. They had developed treatments for conditions that other civilizations considered incurable and shared their discoveries through carefully managed channels that made it seem like natural scientific progress. The manufacturing facilities produced technologies that were quietly introduced to other species over time. Zarathil recognized improvements to Valorian weapons and ship systems that had appeared gradually over the centuries. What her people had thought were their own innovations were actually human gifts carefully disguised to preserve the illusion of independence. Jake took her to a quiet observation deck overlooking the main fleet anchorage where thousands of human warships waited in perfect formation. He finally told her the complete truth about their relationship and his feelings for her. He admitted that his original mission had been purely professional, but that he had genuinely fallen in love with her during their time together. He explained that he had requested permission to reveal human existence because he could no longer bear lying to the woman he cared about. The decision to expose their civilization had been difficult for human leadership, since they preferred to remain hidden. But Jake had argued that Zarathil could be trusted and that the Valorians deserved to know the truth. The revelation that Jake truly loved her, despite his deception, helped Zarathil begin to accept the new reality she faced. She realized that her anger about being managed was less important than the fact that humanity had used its power to protect rather than exploit other species. The galaxy was safer and more peaceful because of human intervention. Admiral Rodriguez returned to offer Zarathil a choice that would determine the future of her empire. The Valorians could become the first official human allies with full knowledge of the truth, or they could have their memories adjusted and return to their previous existence as an unknowingly managed species. If she chose alliance, the Valorian Empire would gain access to human technology and protection while helping to guide other species toward the same partnership. If she chose ignorance, her people would continue to exist as they always had while humans worked invisibly to ensure their survival and prosperity. Jake waited silently while she considered the decision that would change everything for her people and determine whether their marriage could continue as a partnership between equals or return to being a comfortable deception. Zarathil stood at the observation window for a long time watching the human fleet that could destroy her empire in minutes, yet chose instead to protect it. She thought about her people and the proud warrior culture they had built without knowing. They lived under humanity's gentle guidance. The choice before her would determine not just her own future, but the destiny of every Valorian alive. She turned to Jake and saw the man she had fallen in love with waiting patiently for her decision. Despite the lies and deception, she realized that everything important about their relationship had been real. His kindness, his intelligence, his respect for her people, and his love for her were genuine even if his identity had been false. Drakai chose that moment to launch their final desperate assault, bringing their entire civilization military might against what they believed was a weakened Valorian empire. Warning alarms echoed through the human command station as sensors detected thousands of insectoid warships approaching from multiple directions. It was the largest space battle fleet anyone had ever assembled. Admiral Rodriguez calmly gave orders. That would determine the outcome of the war within hours. Human ships throughout the galaxy began moving toward the battle zone while defensive systems came online around Earth and the Valorian home worlds. Jake requested permission to join the fight, and Sam granted it with a nod of understanding. Zarathil watched Jake transform before her eyes as he prepared for combat. His careful human mannerisms disappeared and were replaced by the fluid movements of a deadly warrior. He put on armor that seemed to merge with his body and picked up weapons that responded to his thoughts. This was the real Jake Morrison revealed at last. She insisted on fighting beside him, and Admiral Rodriguez provided her with human battle gear that enhanced her natural Valorian strength to incredible levels. The armor felt alive on her body, and the weapons in her hands contained more destructive power than entire Valorian battle fleets. She was no longer just a queen, but a warrior equipped with humanity. Most advanced technology. Their ship joined the human fleet racing toward the battle zone where Drakai forces were already engaging Valorian defenders. Zarathel watched through tactical displays as the insectoid warriors discovered they were not facing a defeated enemy, but the combined might of two civilizations fighting as true partners for the first time. The battle showcased the devastating effectiveness of human technology, guided by Valorian tactical knowledge and warrior spirit. Jake coordinated fleet movements through direct neural links with human artificial intelligence systems, while Zarathil used her understanding of Valorian formations to maximize their effectiveness with human weapons. The Drakai found themselves facing enemies they could not understand or counter. Human ships appeared and disappeared using cloaking technology, while Valorian warriors fought with weapons that could destroy entire squadrons with single shots. The insectoid advantage in numbers became meaningless when each human-enhanced Valorian could defeat dozens of enemies. Jake and Zarathil led boarding parties against Drakai command ships, and she watched her husband demonstrate capabilities that left her breathless. He moved through enemy corridors like a force of nature, destroying everything in his path while coordinating attacks across multiple vessels simultaneously. His enhanced reflexes and strength made him nearly unstoppable in close combat. Working together, they captured the main Drakai command vessel and used its communication systems to offer surrender terms to the remaining insectoid forces. The alien warriors found themselves faced with destruction or submission to the new human-Valorian alliance. Most chose to surrender rather than face complete extinction. Within 6 hours, the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen was defeated so completely that the Drakai civilization would never again pose a threat to anyone. The victory demonstrated that human-Valorian cooperation could accomplish things that neither species could achieve alone. In the aftermath of battle, Zarathil made her decision about the future. She announced that the Valorian Empire would become humanity's first official ally and help introduce human protection to other species across the galaxy. Her people would learn the truth about their guardian angels and choose whether to accept partnership or maintain comfortable ignorance. Jake revealed that there were indeed hundreds of other human operatives embedded throughout galactic civilization, all working to ensure that no species faced extinction and that conflicts remained manageable. The network of protection that humanity had built over centuries would now operate openly with Valorian assistance. Admiral Rodriguez welcomed Zarathil as co-commander of the new alliance and began sharing human technologies that would transform Valorian society. Medical advances would extend lifespans, agricultural improvements would end hunger, and communication systems would connect Valorian worlds with the greater human network. The transition was not without challenges, as many Valorians struggled to accept that their independence had always been an illusion. Some felt betrayed by the deception, while others were grateful to learn about their protectors. Zarathil worked tirelessly to help her people understand that human guidance had made them stronger rather than weaker. Jake and Zarathil established new protocols for contact with unknown species based on honesty rather than deception. They would offer other civilizations the same choice the Valorians had received: partnership with full knowledge or continued protection without awareness. Most species that learned the truth chose alliance over ignorance. Their first joint mission involved making contact with a newly discovered alien species that showed promising potential for joining the growing alliance. The Kalari were a peaceful aquatic people whose world was threatened by cosmic radiation from a dying star. Human technology could save them, but the operation required Valorian diplomatic skills to gain their trust. Jake and Zarathel worked together to convince the Kalari leadership that the offered help came with no strings attached except friendship. Their success in gaining acceptance for human aid demonstrated that the new alliance model could work with species very different from either humans or Valorians. Months later, Zarathel reflected on how her marriage had begun as a symbol of human weakness, but had become the foundation of the galaxy new order. She and Jake now traveled between stars together, helping other species understand their place in humanity's vast protective network while building genuine partnerships based on mutual respect. The final scene of their story showed them planning another contact mission with a species that had just achieved faster-than-light travel. As they prepared to reveal the truth about galactic civilization to these newcomers, Zarathel realized that she had found her true purpose, not as a conqueror, but as a protector working alongside the most remarkable beings in the universe. Squeezed her hand as their ship prepared to jump to light speed, and she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as partners in the greatest mission any species could undertake, ensuring that intelligence and compassion would guide the galaxy future rather than fear and aggression.